All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be with you all today. My name is Pastor Louis Straker. I am lead pastor of Reflections Church, but here in the capacity of Clergy for Safe Cities and also on the clergy lead team for the God Squad here in Brooklyn, New York. And so we're honored to have you with us. This is our Clergy for Safe Cities National Faith Leader Summit. It is a response to the mass killings that we've seen running rampant in our nation and in our cities. As you know, recently we had two major mass shootings in our nations that we recognize. The one that took place a couple of weeks ago in Buffalo, New York. Many of you have already been there. Some of your teams have been on the ground, and we'll hear from some of our clergy that have been leading efforts there as well. That resulted in 10 people being killed and 13 being shot. And so on the heels of that, when you thought that we were just dealing with this major tragedy, right after, just this past weekend, the week before, we had to deal with the shooting. I believe it was last Monday, if I'm not correct, and Monday or Tuesday, we saw the shooting that took place in Uvalde, Texas, at the Robb Elementary School. And unfortunately, it resulted in 19 little precious children, lives being taken. Two teachers lost their lives in that mass shooting. And then we have to think about some of the additional effects of the mass shooting, where a husband of one of the teachers, after going to the memorial, when he got home, was so stricken with grief that he himself caught a heart attack and he passed away. And so we see the effects of these mass shootings. We see even the hidden effects of these mass shootings. And we're here. We're here because I think it's time that we really come together as a nation and to give a faith response. I would dare say a righteous response to the mass shootings that are taking place. Many of them we don't even hear about. We hear about Buffalo. We hear about Uvalde, Texas, but there are many that are in your cities that go unrecognized by the media. Many in your cities that we don't hear of the national outcry or the outcry from your cities. And so we really believe that it's time for clergy, who I believe are the most credible voices here on earth, to come together and really begin to, one, in this time and space, come together and really have the discussions on what has taken place, what we're seeing on the grounds, what we can do collectively. I believe that there's power when the people come together. And so to have those of you that have already joined in, we have over 400 people that are registered, and many of them are coming in as we speak. But we want to welcome you into this space. We want to thank God for the work that you're doing in your cities. We want to thank God for the opportunity to come together as clergy who care. Every life matters, even the lives that we see in our cities that are being taken. And we count mass shootings at 4 or more, not including the shooter. But if you really think about every single day, the multiple individuals that are being shot, we're experiencing mass shootings every single day in our communities, and it's overwhelming. One life lost is one too many. And it's high time that we come together as clergy and we let our voices be heard, our voices are known, that we care about what's going on in our city. We believe that we can do something about it. So we want to thank our convener, Pastor Guilford Monrose, and all of the wonderful leaders that are here fighting in your towns. We've come together today because there is a crisis in our nation. These mass killings, there's today, it's about 230 mass shootings. We don't even have 230 days into the year as yet. We're averaging some 1.5, 1.4 mass shootings every day. And it's time that we do something about it. And I really believe the people that can do something about it are the people of God on this call. So we welcome you, we greet you, and we'll continue to hear from our leaders today. I'm going to turn this over to Reverend Larita Rice Barnes from East St. Louis, Illinois, and she will give us our invocation.
Amen. Thank you. Greetings to everyone. I will be praying according to my Christian faith, and I invite you to join in according to your faith. Let us go before the throne of grace. Father, we just thank you right now for your power, for your grace, for your love, for your mercy, for all that you have called us to do. And even today, oh God, I just decree and declare your word that this space is sacred. I thank you, oh God, for the strategies and the resources and the implementation that will be released on today, that we're able to be feet on the ground and go out into the communities. God, we lift up those that have been affected by gun violence, those who have lost loved ones to gun violence, those that are on the front line, oh God. We know that it gets hard, and these horrendous acts happening time and time again. We're searching for answers. And God, we even lift up our legislators now, that laws will be made that will benefit the righteous and those who are most vulnerable and those who are being affected. And God, we thank you for the power of peace, and we thank you for the power of love and unity that we're able to band together from various denominations and economic backgrounds and all across this country. And Father, even now, thank you for the power of peace. Those who are working with the families, God, we lift them up right now. And we thank you for all that you have done. And we thank you for that you're about to do in and through us. Let your glory be revealed. Let your power be manifested. And we give you glory and honor and praise in the name that I pray, Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor, for that very powerful prayer. We will now have opening remarks by our convener, Pastor Guilford Monrose.
Thank you so much, Pastor Straker, and thank all of you again for joining us all across this great country of ours. It's really a delight to be with all of you. I want to thank our co-partners on this effort. Thank you so much for the 67th Precinct Clergy Council, the interim president, Pastor Hines, for joining us in the city, and not only in the city, but all over the world, it seems like, with the registration that we have coming in. And also to the National Faith Leaders to End Gun Violence Coalition. Thank you so much. Clergy for Safe Cities is a coalition established to support clergy-based gun violence prevention work and to support clergy everywhere. This is important because sometimes in all of the things that is happening, when we talk about the mass shootings, one of the things that we want to lift up before all of you is that we want to be a clearinghouse for faith leaders to come to think through all of that is happening, and also to offer up a response, a collective response, and to create a national voice when it comes to not only mass killings, but also everyday gun violence. And so I believe that even in my work as the director of faith-based and community partnerships for the mayor of New York City, that what we've seen and what we're experiencing in New York City is not only necessary in New York City, we've seen it all over the United States of America. Not only in the United States of America, we've seen it in South American countries, we're seeing it in the Caribbean, we've seen it in the US Virgin Islands. And so to be able to come together with faith leaders to really, number one, just let you know that you have friends with you. You're not alone in your local city. We're here to support you. That is very much so one of the main things that we want to get out of this. We want you to see the beauty of just faith leaders who are really grieving with the condition of our country, but also that we don't want to lose our prophetic voice. And I think that as we go through today, we're going to hear from just some reflections throughout the country as we know for sure, as Pastor Straker said in the beginning, a lot of the mass shootings, which is four more, not including the shooter, is happening in our urban countries, in our urban cities. And what we want to do is that we want to lift up all the ones that, of course, major, like 21 people being shot and killed. God forbid how that family and that community is feeling. But also to that young man family who was killed 2 blocks from my church last night in Brooklyn. And it happens from Buffalo to Buffalo Avenue in Brooklyn, from East St. Louis, Illinois to Milwaukee, to Orlando, to Christiansted, St. Croix, to Trinidad and Tobago. All over this globe, we have a pandemic, or gondemic, as they would say. And I think that it's so important to do so. We're going ahead now we're going to go to Pastor Richard Hines, and he's going to call in the folks from Buffalo. He's been to Buffalo. We're going to get a report from him. But before we do that, I just want to say to some of you, so you have an idea, thank you so much to the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of New York. We have the Central State Medical Center from Columbia, New Jersey, who was on. Also Shul Newton from Newtonville, Massachusetts. We want to thank the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement from Baltimore. We have the Sikh Cultural Society on. Thank you so much from the Metro Organizing Coalition, East St. Louis, Trinity Episcopal Church in Baltimore, Maryland. We have folks on from Kingston, New Jersey, the Virgin Islands, Patterson, New Jersey, Trenton, Tax Offenders Re-Entry Initiative in Dallas, Texas, under the leadership of Bishop T.D. Jakes. Thank you so much for your support and partnership, and we will continue to name those as we go along. So as you can see, and as we've been saying again, we want to let you know that you, as a clergy, as a group, we have a place to come to when it comes to gun violence, and we want to thank you so much for us convening and you joining us in this time together. Around 3:30 or so, we'll hear from the Mayor of New York City, and then we'll also go to Uvalde, Texas, where we have some support there too as well. Pastor Hines.
Thank you very much, Pastor Monrose, and I echo the sentiments expressed in welcoming you all here to this very important check-in as we, as faith leaders across this country, provide a response to the mass killings that is taking place. One is too many. And for Buffalo, the lives of Buffalo have been uprooted on May 14th when there was a mass shooting, and not just a mass shooting, but it was a hate crime against our Black brothers and sisters in at Tops supermarket in the broad daylight, and it wreaked havoc in the city of Buffalo. We were able, Pledge for Safe Cities and the God Squad were able to be there 2 weekends ago to be on the grounds with other organizations from Brooklyn across the country who met and were there to triage to see how best we can offer our services, offer support to them. It was very real, and the pain was very palpable. And it is definitely one that we would want to share with you, and to have not just those who have journeyed there, but persons who have been on the grounds, persons who live in Buffalo, to share their experience. One of those persons who I would invite to share this time, Reverend Denise Walden. Reverend Walden is a director of organizing for Voice Buffalo, and also she's a part of Live Free USA. And we want to welcome her. Reverend Walden is one from the very genesis of the incident, has been on the ground, working with the families, triaging, supporting them in whatever way she can, and to bring a collective together and to provide support on the ground. So we want to hear from Reverend Walden, and we appreciate her coming on and to give a sense of what's happening, how the families, what's the mood in Buffalo right now, and also share areas of concern. Reverend Walden.
Greetings and blessings, everyone. Happy to be with you, but not happy to be with you under these circumstances right now. But definitely good to be in a space filled with faith leaders who are invested in this work. So I serve as the executive director of Voice Buffalo. I've been in my position as executive director for a little over 60 days now. And so you can only imagine what happened here a couple weeks ago is just very, very surreal to me. And I think still trying to wrap my mind around what has happened in my community, as I'm also a resident of the community that this happened in. I think our community is still in a place of shock. It's very difficult. And just being very transparent on this call, it's very, very difficult. I feel like a tragedy happened in our community, a horrific tragedy happened in our community. And within 48 hours, it was like, okay, now get back to life as normal. Our kids were expected to go back to school. People were expected to return to work. Like people that we love and hold dear, and some of the elders that hold our community together hadn't just been tragically ripped from us. There was no real plan on how to support our children as they return to school, or what mental health supports would look like for them as they went back into the building, even though a lot of our school buildings were receiving threats and had to go on lockdown within days of what happened. And we have teachers of color who work in those buildings trying to support those students, but they're not getting any support or help that they need to mentally be able to show up for their students the way that they need to. I will say that I appreciated the national support coming in. We worked very diligently to get a resource center up and moving, not 24 hours after what happened. And then another resource center within a week was open to meet people's needs as far as groceries, so on and so forth. And so those things that happened, and I'm grateful for that. I was able to be the liaison between the federal government and the DA's office to work with the families who tragically lost loved ones, to make sure that they were getting the funeral supports and the supports that they needed in place from the federal government and from our state. And I felt honored to do that. And I've continued to walk alongside the families offering pastoral care. It's going to take a lot for our community to rebound from this. I mean, the fact that we only had one grocery store in our community. I know I myself, my kids called me about 4 days in and they were like, Mom, somebody needs to go grocery shopping. I was like, well, just walk. And as I said, walk, I caught myself, right? And it's going to take a lot, but I think as faith leaders, we need to discuss how our communities are so ill-equipped to meet our basic needs to begin with, that when a tragedy such as this happens, it completely shakes our entire world. Completely. Like, as where other parts of Buffalo can go back to life, we can't. We're still looking for a way forward. And then we need to talk about how are we going to address the gun laws that allow these guns to be manufactured and sold to begin with. And why has this continued to be a thing, even with so many mass shootings? Because I agree, one is one too many, but we're having on average more than one a day. And yet the gun laws stay the same. That should be unacceptable to the faith community. And so I'm hoping that this is a group that will diligently work on legislation that will change the gun laws and stand against folks who try to keep those things in place. But also, how will we come together around our communities of color, making sure and holding states and cities accountable to make sure that they're equipped to have the things that they need to survive, the things that meet the social determinants of health. And I will leave that there.
Thank you so much, Reverend Walden. And I know you have to go off for another meeting, but I appreciate you sharing the reality that exists currently in Buffalo. One thing that we are aware of is that this is not going to be a sprint. It is going to be a marathon. It's going to take some time. And I'm aware also, and we are aware also, that I believe all the funeral services have been concluded for all 10 victims. And so it's about healing. It's about healing and about providing necessary resources to Buffalo. That is what is so very well needed. I must state, and we while we were there on the weekend, there was a sense of coming together of the faith leaders there, and to provide through the power of music and an evening of just worship and just and worshiping and just giving praise to the Creator, and to bring a sense of healing. The families were there at the service. It's a very fulfilling evening for the families and for the community and residents there in Buffalo, New York. But the work continues. The work starts now. And I want to introduce and to bring to our attention and to bring some remarks in this conversation as we speak to Buffalo. And I also want to recognize others from Buffalo who are on the call right now. We recognize, we see you, and we thank you for joining us in this conversation and on this Faith Leaders Response. One of the founder for Life Camp, Miss Erica Ford, who plays a very instrumental role in the fight against gun violence for New York City. Erica was with us we were with Erica, or we're together on the ground, and we were able to have meetings with various individuals and organizations and groups that are doing the work. So Erica, if we would appreciate you coming on and to just give your remarks and your feedback as to the situation in Brooklyn and Buffalo.
Straight ahead. Peace, everybody. Standing in front of our Peace Mobile, which we were able to take down to Buffalo and provide therapeutic services and support to the folks on the ground in Buffalo, both the families and the people who were serving the families, people from the surrounding area. We were able to, do a day of healing out there, and it was very needed. And the consistency of that, not only in Buffalo, but everywhere, because the rise and the disease of violence is infecting our communities everywhere, right? And so how do we not only talk about legislation, but how do we impact change around the ground, right? How do we get our further clergies, our parishioners, our followers, our family to
we have a signal issue.
All have to play with a guide. How do we shift the person in the third row from, okay. Let me go back inside. But can you hear me now? It's because I walked away from my camera.
Yes, but we can hear you.
So how do we do those things? How do we help each other elevate our work and elevate our voice, right? Because when you look at Buffalo, when you look at Texas, when you look at 43 people shot in Chicago this weekend, you see that the disease is rising high, right? And more people are getting infected. But when we look in Queens this weekend, Memorial Weekend, we had absolutely no shootings, right? So we know things work, and we know the power of the word, right? And so how do we lift the word? How do we spread the word? And how do we do it free of judgment, free of ego, free of jealousy, free of comparison? Because now it's time to form Voltron, right? It's not about one group, one church, one faith. It is about how all of us can come together and be a voice, be a fire that can light the minds and the hearts of these young people to change the direction of where they're going, right? Help them heal and transform. When we were in Buffalo, right before the concert, people were out working, and one of the girls overworked so much that she fell out, flatlined, died. And the EMS gave her CPR and brought her back to life. But our people who, and even all of y'all who are the first line people, who are the providers, are on thin lines of even your own oxygen, right? And so we have to help each other. And we have to see the value and importance of that, just as the value and importance of standing up on Sunday or Saturday or Friday and spreading the word, right? Because if you're not well, then you can't help somebody else, right? And then you're helping people from a space of frustration and limitation. And so Life Camp believes in helping people heal. It believes in wellness and therapeutic services. And I see Arnita from Milwaukee. I see Raina, who was on the front line, making sure that they was giving therapeutic, culturally competent therapeutic services to folks in Buffalo, right? Pushing back the Red Cross and the State Department. And then they have a meeting with the governor's office tomorrow, right? Because of the work that we did collectively, right? And that's the important thing that I want to continue to push and want us to hear, that our collective voice, we can change the direction of this hate that is overtaking the hearts and minds of our people. We can change it. We can change it. We can change it. Peace and blessings.
Thank you so much, Erica. We appreciate your sentiments and the truth, which you so rightly said. It is going to take the collective. It's going to take all of us come together, and we encourage. I encourage all of us here who are on this call that the approach that we take cannot be passive. It has to be an active approach, because we do know the power of love. We do know the power of love and the power of love in action. So as we continue to support Buffalo, we will be going back to Buffalo. We'll be working, I think the end of this month, we are going back to Buffalo, and we will continue to not just to have conversation, but also to bring resources to them. I do believe the nearest supermarket to them in Tops is 3 miles away or 3.5 miles away. So it is a food desert. It is also a technology desert in Buffalo. And so there is much work that needs to be done there. And so I call upon our consciences. I call upon all the leaders and those who are on this call, that when the call comes out from the God Squad and from Culture for Safe Cities to partner with us to do the work that needs to be done to bring healing to Buffalo, that it will be a call that will yield the result that we anticipate. So thank you so much to Reverend Walden. Thank you so much to Erica, and to those, Rain and Antonia, and all those who are on the call representing Buffalo. We really appreciate you. We going to stand with you, and we will continue to do our part as we seek to bring the healing that is so needed in Buffalo. Thank you very much. And I believe we transition over now to Uvalde.
Yeah, just before we get to Uvalde, thank you so much, Pastor Hines. We're going to hear from Alexis, who's going to give us a quick update from Kingdom Mission Society on some of the policy changes that we need to have. In the past, we as a faith group, we have not really done a lot of work on policy in the larger sense. But I think that now, as we see how what is happening to some of the early stopgaps, some gaps that we can put in place, some things that we can do right now. I think as a faith group, we just want to give you a broad sense as to what are some of the policies that we're going to be looking at. And I'm going to have our dear friend Alexi from Kingdom Mission Society come forward. And we also want to recognize one of the fathers in the United States on ministry, Dr. A.L. Bernard, too, as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Bernard, for joining us. Alexi, could you come in now and tell us some of the maybe one or two of the policy change that is needed for us, so that we can start thinking as faith leaders onto how we want to align our faith and our moral judgment in some of these policies that we need to be looking at.
Thank you very much, Pastor Monrose, and esteemed clergy of various traditions. So wonderful to be with you. 2 or 3 brief things. One, at the top, gun violence interruption funding. You'll see this through the American Rescue Plan. A lot of other partners on this call are doing this at the local level, but gun violence interruption funding is something you definitely want to be taking a look at. In the Congress, we'll be looking at red flag laws, and we'll also be looking at universal background checks. We expect the U.S. House to take up legislation this week, and the Senate to take up legislation hopefully as soon as next week. At the state level, we see action happening in New Jersey, New York, and California. And one of those pieces there is raising the minimum age for purchase of assault-style weapons. So that's the very brief, very high level things that are occurring on the policy front. But your voices are so crucial for that. Lots of ways to get involved.
Alexi, before you leave, what is the holdback in terms of the trying to pass the laws on the background check, and how that will have a direct impact on some of these mass shootings that we've seen with AR-15 guns that we have, or what I would call killing machines?
Absolutely, Pastor Monrose. There's something that we call the Charleston loophole. The Charleston loophole means that sometimes they don't wait the mandatory number of days, or when they do, it kind of expires and the gun is able to go through anyways because of backlogs in the background check system. There are efforts in the House to close the Charleston loophole. Congressman Clyburn in particular is such a strong champion on that. We do think out of the Senate that there may be interest this time to improve the background check system, but that's the fundamental. We need that system enhanced. We need to urge the Senate to take action, and we need to pray, quite honestly, for Senator Mitt Romney.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing is that is there any work around how is there any support in terms of organizing the Faith Voices in Washington, D.C.? I know that there's a lot of different things happening, but in case like this group want to come together to be able to move, how would that work out?
I think next Wednesday will be a crucial time. There'll be a large gathering. There will also be other gatherings coming up, but next Wednesday would be a crucial time. Please be in touch. Faith Leaders for Ending Gun Violence. We'd love to work with you. There's a lot of groups doing various things, but next week is a crucial week in Washington, Wednesday in particular.
Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now we're going to, Pastor Hines, we're going to go to Uvalde, San Antonio, Fort Worth, Texas. We have Reverend Tatum, who visited Uvalde, one of the first clergy members who actually showed up in Uvalde, and he's here with us. So Reverend Tatum is going to come on and he's going to give us a report, a three-minute report, and then we'll ask him 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll continue going around the country. We still have Milwaukee to go. I see we have folks from Raw Tools and also to Red Letter Christians, and so we have a few people who's going to say hello to us so that we can have a sense as to what is happening across this beautiful nation. So, Reverend Tatum.
Hello, sir. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
First of all, I want to thank you all for allowing me an opportunity to come and share with you all. We are definitely in a response mode in Uvalde. I spent 3 days in Uvalde, the day after the shooting and the next several days, meeting with pastors and people who were directly impacted by the tragedy in Uvalde. We also, while we were there when we got the news of the father of the 4 who was married to the teacher who died of grief. And we were with some of the family members when that happened. So if I could describe Uvalde, I would simply call it grief on top of grief on top of grief. And while I was there, I realized that it wasn't just another shooting, but that the world convened on Uvalde. And right now, you have news media and other folk from all over the world, including the Duchess Meghan, who showed up incognito and went to the same blood drive that I went to when I first went into town. I gave blood the first thing. She went to that blood drive and saw the workers working very dutifully and diligently and bought them all lunch and helped around without anybody knowing who she was. And that's the kind of love that is pouring in to Uvalde now, out of grief, out of being compelled to come, and other reasons. People are showing up in Uvalde. So I see Uvalde as our Selma moment. If we could capture the essence of Selma, you need a place that can garner the attention of the world across regions, across race, and across religion to seize the moment to change the trajectory of life expectancy for those who are impacted by gun violence. However, right now, in the timing of this tragedy, I would like to encourage people who have been in this space and understand these kinds of tragedies that we respect the privacy of Uvalde as they prepare to lay the rest of their loved ones in peace while they address the grief. And that's the most challenging proposition for Uvalde right now, is because it's a close-knit community, roughly 16,000 people. They're either relatives, been knowing each other all their lives, and it's very family oriented. So this has shaken this entire community and region to its core. Now, you can take two postures in this position, and I was encouraged to do one of them. You can take the political posture and go in there talking about guns and, you know, all the things that surround the policy piece. Or we as clergy doing this triage can take not the political, but the spiritual position and go in discerning the needs based on us listening, based on us loving, based on us learning, and then based on us leaving that community to allow them to grieve in peace. And that's not happening. So as we put together the plan, and I thank Sister Ford for her eloquent commentary and about us slowing down and put a practical process in place so that no matter where you are addressing and dealing with these issues, you can feel comfortable going into those spaces, knowing some how to do things and what not to do when you go into those spaces. Because I left after I realized that community has not had a chance to grieve in privacy. And they're trying to adjust to this new normal in the public space. And what they really need is grace by giving them room to grieve in privacy. And I believe the clergy is the one to give that message to the world, from Uvalde to Buffalo to everywhere else around USA, America. So thank you all. There's so much other things I would want to share and say, but I think that's most critical at this time in this hour, that we give Uvalde the respect and the privacy to grieve in peace. And then on the other side of this, let's be prepared to deal with the trauma that's been caused by this tragedy in a way that makes sense to them and not make sense to us. And that's why it's important for us to listen, to learn, to love, and to leave something with them, but leave them space for grace to work in their lives. Thank y'all, and I open the floor for any comments, questions, or concerns.
Yeah, we won't have no open for questions or comments as yet. I just wanted to ask you, when are you going back to Uvalde? I know that you'll be joining us in Brooklyn next week. We'll have some more information on that. We have, again, a national response in person in Brooklyn next week. Reverend Tatum is going to be with us from Fort Worth, Texas. But tell us, when are you going back, and what are some of the needs that you would want us to support you with?
Yeah, so thank you. We plan on going back right after we come back from New York. That gives us some time here at the church and in our community to put together our circle of compassion, because when we go back, we're taking what we're calling our redemption bowl based on Ephesians 4. Sister Ford was so powerful. when we can put aside whatever gifts and graces God has given us and just come together and work, we'll discover that all those gifts and graces have a role in this process. But if we're all jockeying and bantering back and forth about who's going to lead or who's in what spot, we'll miss these golden opportunities. And so right now, the circle will meet on Thursday, and we're calling public officials and others to the church to really put together a comprehensive strategy based on what we've heard and based on what we know. So when we come together, we'll meet this week. We're gathering toys right now. We're going to initially focus on play therapy, because you're not talking about just the 600 in that school. You're talking about an entire community of children who have been traumatically impacted by this. And if you go in there with the traditional, God loves you, let me pray for you, you're going to get the same thing that Pastor Pedro Luna received when the guy looked at him and said, where was God when my baby girl was shot and killed? So you have to take a different approach going into this community that's highly Hispanic, highly Catholic, highly family oriented, and not go in there, pushing religion. You're going to have to push love and compassion and understanding, and religion will take care of itself. So we went in there and we listened to the pastor. And he said, first, we need your prayers. And then he told us we need Christian counselors. And so we've been galvanizing Christian counselors for him. While we were there, we see they were poor before the pandemic. They were poor during the pandemic. They were poor after the pandemic. And they're poor during this tragedy. So they need MONEY. So if you really want to help, there are some churches we've identified that you could send FUNDS directly to those churches so that they can be helpful in their own community. Say amen, somebody. So when we do that, we're showing them true compassion because we're giving them love without restrictions. We're saying, here, we know you're going to need this. You needed it before the pandemic. You needed it during the pandemic and you didn't get it. You needed it after the pandemic and you didn't get it. But the Lord has created a space for those of us with compassion to share out of our hearts. And so that's what we need now for those people. Setting up here, preparing to go back. I wouldn't send anyone into Uvalde right now. I wouldn't. It is just a massive of people inflicting their wills on an entire community. And you would just become another part of that discussion. But what I do encourage us, not just here, but as we come to New York next week, and then subsequently after that, let's start planning for the recovery of those that we know of, but also preparing for the next. We found this out with our relationship with Jesse Jackson and Rainbow Push, is that the FBI has already put together indicators that they know when these type of incidents are going to happen. Well, I think it's important that clergy get a hold to that report and we understand everything that's in that so that if we're engaging, we'll know what we're looking for before it happens. So that's pretty much it for now, unless y'all have something else.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that. And you'll be joining us next week, God's willing, in New York on Monday, June the 6th, 6:30 in central Brooklyn. So we'll be glad to see you and others who are coming too as well. Let me push this out to Pastor Straker.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Reverend Tatum. Such a powerful and great insight on how we can approach this from a very practical way. And so we want to thank you for that awesome report, and we look forward to our time with you here in New York next week. I want to bring up, as we continue with getting insight and responses from around the nation, right here in our own, my own hometown, we want to bring up now Chloe Breyer to give us some insight and remarks.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. And I just, as a resident of Harlem and St. Philip's Episcopal Church and the Interfaith Center, I just have spent a little too much time, I think, as all of you have had at interfaith vigils when young men and women in the community are murdered. And the question is, what are these instances in our cities? How do they connect with this larger phenomenon of mass shooting? And that's what I want to say a word about, because there are a lot of connections, obviously, from the the grieving families that they leave behind, from the lives that are and the potential that are lost. These are ways that they share in common, but I think one way they also share in common is the guns. And there's just, in New York City, we have too many people whose guns come one way or another from out of state. And the origins of those guns are come because people are trying to make money. And that's what it boils down to. And I think that the gun industry, while it certainly isn't the whole problem, is an enormous piece of it. And so that, as we live in a country now where there are 120 guns for every 100 people. And again, while this can't be entirely blamed, it is a large part of it. So I invite all of you. I spent a little while on the phone this week, and I'm glad. I did some praying, but I also did some phone calls. And those phone calls were to not my own representatives, but they were to people out of state, largely people who identify as Republican, and but who are our fellow Americans. And I got a call. I got a little pushback from somebody, I think in Tennessee, who said, "Well, listen, why don't you call your own legislators?" And I said to them, I do call my own legislators, and actually, in this case, they agree that there's got to be a way of having more background checks. And I said to the person, "Listen, it's not a question of me, but we need you. We need your representative, because we can't do it alone. We cannot, as a country, pass the federal, the background check stuff. We can't do the, getting rid of the automatic assault weapons in the same way. We can't do it alone. We can't do it as Massachusetts, or we can't do it as New York. We can't do it as South Carolina. We have to do it as a whole country." So I invite you to come with me down into New York to Washington, D.C. With the folks from Parkland, if you remember, have set up an organization called March for Our Lives, and they are doing some visits to both sides of the aisle, because we need both sides of the aisle to pass some kind of sensible gun laws, so this doesn't get as out of hand as it has recently. And I'm going to put that in the chat, and I'm going to put my contact information in the chat as well. So thank you so much for all of your good efforts and prayers. I hope you'll join me.
Thank you for that too as well. Yes, faith leaders definitely making calls to our friends and for across the country is definitely a very important piece too as well. We're going to go to Atlanta, Georgia. Reverend Sean in the mayor's office to prevent gun violence in Atlanta, who's also going to give us some thoughts and some reflections as well. You can come at this time, Reverend.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all again for allowing us this opportunity to participate in such a meaningful dialogue, as the evidence is all around us every day of the need to do something. This something is what continues to befuddle us, because we're down here in the South, and so down here, guns are sacrosanct, and we just recently had the state legislature pass, open carry. And there's a very large number of people who just believe the way that you solve the gun violence is to arm everyone. And so this is the most critical time for people of faith, of all faiths, to speak loudly both in word and in deed, that we have to find better ways to deal with difference. We have to find the real source, right, of life, which is love. So I'm very encouraged by what I've heard thus far with everyone else's efforts. I know with the city of Atlanta, Mayor Andre Dickens has a anti-violence office held up by JQ Clemens here in Atlanta. And she and I have are working together quite a bit in trying to roll out the mayor's summer safety plan. And we're trying to take it to each quadrant of the city on the ground and bringing together faith traditions of all kinds, along with nonprofits and community leaders, to get everyone's involvement on the ground, while simultaneously we argue and fight for gun legislation. But in the meantime, because that takes time, in the meantime, we are taking all hands on deck. What can I do individually to help stem this rising tide? What can we do collectively to mitigate, right, all of this destruction that's bringing so much harm to families and to this country? And so that's all I got for this afternoon, as I'm really anxious to continue to listen to what the rest of you have to say, and our prayers for both in Texas and Buffalo. And so I am listening intently to figure out then how can we help in Atlanta in that effort as well. So God bless you all.
No, thank you so much again. And I think that one of the things that this call is going to do is, for the most part, is so that you all know that you're not alone in your local city, that we are creating this collective voice of faith leaders to be able to tackle the issue together. We can't do it individually, but we could do it nationally, collectively. And so this is a collective call for all of us to be able to join our voices in terms of really projecting what we want to be as a society. And I think that our moral compass is saying that we can't have young people with machines of war, killing machines, going into schools, churches, supermarkets, movie theaters, mowing down and killing without any regard. And truly, we are at war with the darkest of humanity. And I think that we have to do a lot of work in the collective sense of what you've seen today to move that forward. We're going to go to Milwaukee now, and Reverend Holloman from the Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention is going to give us some remarks as well as to what she's seeing, what they're hearing in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Hello, everyone. I'm Arnita Holloman, Director of the City of Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Thank you for this opportunity to share this time with you all. I was there in Buffalo for a very short time last weekend, and definitely give respect to Sister Erica Ford and the work that Life Camp was doing on the ground, and for all of the people that are there living in Buffalo that are working on this issue and working to support families and communities that have been impacted by mass shootings in Buffalo, Uvalde, and other cities across the nation. To echo some of what was said earlier, Milwaukee, on May 13th, I believe the same weekend is the mass shooting in Buffalo. On May 13th, there was a mass shooting here in Milwaukee where 17 people were shot. I think it went up to 18. People were shot in one incident. Thankfully, none of them died. However, in terms of the outpouring of support and national attention that often mass shootings get, we did not see that same level of support here. Same thing, earlier this year, maybe about 2 months ago, there were 6 people found, dead in a home. It was a mass shooting still, although, they were found days later, still a mass shooting, still very traumatic for the families, that the community and everyone connected to them. And so I'm echoing everything that's said around the need for additional support, as well as, the sensible gun laws, advocating for the universal background checks, the red flag laws. And I would add, in terms of what we're advocating for as a faith, community, but really also looking at, the mental health piece of this, which I believe, I know it was mentioned earlier, and I'm a licensed therapist myself, and I understand the pervasive impact of the trauma that not just those families experience, but again, their coworkers, the community, the larger community, but and also to Erica's point, the folks who are doing the work, the impact that it has on them as well. And so another piece of advocacy is also around the interstate compact or interstate impact. So for licensed professionals, because we understand that it's important that people are also receiving that support and receiving those therapeutic services, and whether they're traditional or non-traditional, from people that look like them, come from their community or similar communities. But in these situations, those same people are also deeply hurt and harmed or traumatized by what's happening. And we're depending on the people most impacted to help each other heal. And so that needs to change as well. And so looking at universal licensing for mental health professionals, so you don't have to go through all of the licensing procedures in every single state in order to be able to provide support. That's a significant barrier, and particularly for Black and Brown clinicians who sometimes can't even afford all of the stipulation, all of the requirements for being licensed in every single state. We've got to get past those barriers and advocate for laws around licensing that look very different and really allow for the help from outside communities, because we understand the people doing the work are also impacted by it. What we're doing here in Milwaukee, one of the things is we convene a group of faith leaders, and Vanisha Kendrick from our office is on. She convenes the group. But we convene a group of faith leaders monthly. And so what we're working to do is help them galvanize and mobilize to provide support. And so we did a call to action last week, Tuesday, just a community call to action, but we're doing a faith leaders call to action actually this evening. So again, Vanisha's leading that work from our office, but we're calling on faith partners, regardless of religious affiliation, denomination. And I know it was said earlier, getting out of like who gets the credit and the ego stuff. At the end of the day, I believe that whatever God you serve, I would imagine that there is a consensus that, people should have life and more abundantly and be able to live it to the full. And too many people are not experiencing that as a result of, the epidemic or, the gundemic, I heard someone say earlier. So we're convening faith leaders here in Milwaukee to address the issues around gun violence overall. So yes, the mass shootings, but gun violence overall, because communities are feeling this every single day. And so we want to be a part of the efforts moving forward in terms of the national movement. So we thank you for the connection, but please know that we are here both in support and solidarity. And we absolutely have to do all of this together. While we take a public health approach to addressing gun violence, we understand, in my estimation, or ours in OVP in Milwaukee, the faith and spiritual piece is a part of our holistic health and care. And so it has to be a part of how we look at any approach to reducing gun violence and mass shootings. And so again, thank you for this space and this time. And we look forward to connecting more, hopefully under better circumstances than what's happened recently. But again, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for that. And we appreciate that. We're going to be have the Mayor of New York City, Mayor Eric Adams, come in to give some remarks at this point in time. Let's see if we can open this camera. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm here. How are you, Pastor?
Okay, I'm doing good. So, oh, sorry, we had you on another name, but we will change that. You can go right ahead. We have faith leaders gathered from across the U.S. here with us today, and I'm sure that they're very interested to hear your thoughts on the role of faith in your city on gun violence?
Well, I just keep remember that I reading somewhere, if my people would turn towards me and pray, I will heal the land. I think there's a real erosion of some of the basic principles that made us who we are. And during my most turbulent and difficult times in life, I turned towards prayer and faith. And I believe we're there again. I think what we're facing did not happen overnight. I think it is just a complete dismantling of the things that we are needed to raise healthy children and families. And, I say over and over again, there must be an intervention and prevention. Prevention, those are the long-term things that we must do and allocate funding to. Something as simple as dyslexia screening. We're doing 100% dyslexia screening in the city of New York. 30% of our inmates in prison are dyslexic. We're looking at mental health. We're leaning into our foster care children that age out every year at 21 with no support, end up in the criminal justice system. We want to be really proactive and prevent, as Archbishop Desmond Tutu states, we spend a lifetime pulling people out of the river. No one goes upstream and prevent them from falling in the first place. We want to take our city upstream, but there's intervention. And intervention means properly funding our crisis management teams, give them the resources to go on the ground and talk with our young people who are on the pathway. The profiles are just similar. They're the same things when you look at the shooters and those who are acting in some violent way. They're the same profiles when we do our analysis. And we also want to make sure that we use our existing agencies. Our Department of Probation now is partnering with every young person who is arrested for a violent act. They're partnering with them and treating them as mentors and giving them the wraparound support that they need. But we need Congress to do more. There's a real problem with the overproliferation of guns in the inner city. Number one, the Supreme Court ruling that is about to come out is alarming for all of us. The right to carry is frightening. The thought that in cities that have had great gun laws, you're now going to open it up where people are going to have the right to openly carry in our cities. That's something that we should be alarmed about. The recent law that stood up in the court by Zelnor Myrie in Brooklyn that allows us now to sue reckless gun manufacturers. Everyone should become familiar with those with the law so that they can look at their cities and figure out doing lawsuits to target these gun manufacturers. But we also need the power of prayer. I'm hoping that we will mobilize during Gun Awareness Month, I like to call it, that every house of worship this weekend will hold a sermon on what we must do in Washington and our state levels and in our cities. And biblical texts really support how we should make sure this is done in all of our texts of worship, the Quran, and any other books that we look at. We talk about what we should be doing. And I'm hoping that we use this weekend to have a national call that this weekend during Gun Violence Awareness Month, but the first weekend to really send a signal out across the entire country that we are focusing on this crucial issue. I heard the story in Milwaukee. It's no different than the story right in Manhattan or the story in Chicago or Atlanta. These are the same stories that we hear over and over again. Too many people are using guns to answer the pains that they are experiencing. And so we're going to do our law enforcement arm. It's unfortunate that we took 2,900 guns off the street since I've been the mayor. We're going to do that. That's the intervention, and we have to focus on that. But it will be an endless flow if we don't have a prevention mechanism in place at the same time. And so I thank you for allowing me to come on, and I thank you for coming and taking on this issue. This is the civil rights battle of our lifetime, dealing with how guns are destroying not only individuals, but it's destroying the anatomy of our cities and our communities. And even when the bullet hits the target, it does not stop ripping apart the body of the families and loved ones and communities that are impacted by the loss, and it's traumatizing. We want to work together. New York is a strong believer in how do we build collaborations And we look forward to that collaboration. Pastor Monroe has been leading here in the city for us, and we want to continue to take the orders from Pastor Monroe and those of you who are on this call. Again, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.
And thank you again so much, Mr. Mayor, for also allowing faith to play an important role in your city, in the city of New York, and we're very grateful to you for that, for sure. So thank you again. Listen, we are collectively supporting mayors and those who are really fighting again on the front lines for this. I know that some of you saying you want to ask some questions. Pastor Hines, could we call Shane from Red Letters Christians to be our last speaker, and then we will take a few comments from those of you. Again, today is an opportunity for us to have just come together to really talk through what the faith community can do. And I think that we have seen that there's a lot of potential in what we're doing. And yes, Sister Erica Ford, that's a very good idea to collect an offering for frontline workers. So definitely that's powerful. This coming weekend, according to what the mayor is saying in terms of, listen, we need to be able to really talk about this, speak on this, preach on this, have sermons and lectures around this, talk to our children, talk to our congregation, our fellowship, talk to your gathering in which you are in this weekend. It's more important. We have been doing this for many years, but you can do it again with a prime focus as to what is happening in our communities and in our cities. And I think that this weekend is definitely a real opportune time collectively that we share some of those interesting words in terms of how do we live in a society without guns? How do we live in a society without AR-15 that is killing our innocent brothers and sisters? And I think that's a conversation that we definitely should have moving forward. And don't forget, next week, Monday, we'll be in person. We have pleasure to join us from Chicago, Washington, D.C., Texas, who's going to be in Brooklyn with us again next week, Monday at 6:30. And we're glad to have all of you in person for a greater conversation. So Shane, my brother from Philadelphia, who was at the NRA, who protested inside the NRA this weekend, if you can come on now and share some remarks.
Yeah, thank you, brother. It's good to see all of you. Good to see a lot of friends and new friends. I'll just real quickly, we were given tickets to the National Rifle Association by a lifetime NRA member, particularly to, and this member's concerned about gun violence. And we had tickets to the NRA's prayer breakfast specifically. So we went to respectfully engage folks that are really in the heart of the gun lobby. So I grew up in the charismatic church, Pastor Gill, and I had these, we had some tracts. We can't be pro-life and ignore gun violence. And so we gave these out that we can't serve two masters. We can choose the cross or the gun. We had some powerful conversations. But we also went to this prayer breakfast. I wore my cross that was made out of the barrel of a gun. This is one of the things that we make out of donated guns. And we went to pray. After being in Uvalde the day before, my heart was heavy, along with all of yours. And we went to this prayer meeting to pray. But it started with sponsors of the NRA. There was the Pledge of Allegiance, the singing of the national anthem. And at a certain point, you just have a heavy heart, and we could not speak. And so we had carried the names of those who lost their lives, both in Buffalo and Uvalde, with us. And we stood and invited these folks at the prayer breakfast to join us in saying their names. And the liturgy that we started was, God knows their names, and so should we. And then after about two of those names, we were approached by police and told we would be arrested if we didn't leave the prayer meeting. Ironically, the police kicked us out of the prayer meeting quicker than they responded to the shooter in Uvalde. There's so many things that struck our heart, but we left respectfully. We invited people to pray outside, and we did finish our liturgy and name those names. But for me, Pastor Monroe, and all of you, I think that it was a reminder to me that we've got to keep turning up the volume for love and grace, centering the people who have been impacted. But we need courage right now. And courage has a lot of different shapes and forms. So it's really an honor to stand with all of you as we do what we can to show courage in this moment.
No problem. Thank you so much, Shane, for your public witness, and we needed much more of that. So we really appreciate that. Thank you again. And if you don't all know Raw Tools is coming to New York soon. So what they do is that for gun buybacks, they also take the guns and turn them into gardening tools. And Mike Martin from Raw Tools is here. Mike, you have a sample of the Raw Tools? Or you want to just talk about the concept of that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
So we've got some basic garden tools here that we make out of guns that are turned in, but we're formed to turn guns into garden tools and introduce people to nonviolent conflict resolution skills. We're currently partnering with Denver and Aurora for 8 buybacks this year. We've brought in 350 firearms from that. You can join a disarming network that is growing ever since these last 2 shootings, where we teach people how to disarm and disable firearms, but then also turn them into garden tools. We invite folks who've been impacted by gun violence to help us cut them up at these buybacks. And we invite folks who've been impacted to help us make garden tools, excuse me, out of them as well at similar events. Shane, who just spoke, is part of Raw Tools Philly. We have Raw Tools Buffalo started 2 months ago. They've done a couple demonstrations. Faith communities have such a unique space to be able to call on people to get rid of their assault style weapons and their firearms before legislation happens. We can be the people who speak courage from our pulpits and encourage our communities, compel our communities to give up their firearms, and the church can lead the way in that. So thanks, Pastor Monrose and God Squad and everyone on this call for giving some time to Raw Tools. There's some links in the chat if you want to find out more on how to plug in.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Mike. Brilliant concept. I'll be talking to the mayor about that as well, to take some of the guns that we have from our gun buyback to take those tools and take those tools and bring them into these neighborhoods, right? And learn to plant and to use and cultivate with the hands, and so that hands are now used to bring life and not to take life. So thank you so much for that concept. Really appreciate that for sure. I'm going to ask Pastor Straker to join me on screen, and we'll take just a few comments. We want to end by 4:20, and again we want to thank all of you for joining and coming on as well. Kamita Morgan, you had some comments that you were placing in the chat. Is she still on? Let me see. Yeah, so Kamita Morgan Randall, want to talk about some solutions? You can unmute yourself. Where did you go? Okay. All right. So I'm not seeing any other hands that are up. So if we don't have any other hands that are up, again, one of the things that we have. Yeah, hold 1 second. I need to call your name in order for you to speak, just so that we can have some semblance of order, because there's a lot of people who is here. So let me go to Reverend M. Smith, Reverend.
Yes, thank you so much, Carmen Smith. I'm here at Union Theological Seminary in the city of New York. Just reading through the chat and listening to everyone, I would offer that as clergy, I'm of the Christian faith. On Sunday, we will get up and we will do the ritual of communion. And I think that is an opportunity to talk to people about, yes, we can have background checks, we can pass the legislation, we can say that 21 is the age to get a gun. And we know with alcohol and cigarettes, people will find a way around even after that. That is important to do. And after that, we have to encourage and start to ask people to repent in ways that are different. But maybe instead of focusing so much on the wine this Sunday, on the blood, that we first focus on the bread when we speak to our congregations, because the bread is meeting the needs. The bread is feeding people. The bread is getting to the heart of what people need and maybe why they feel the need to have a gun, because they feel like I don't have access or I don't have a way, or you're the reason that it's being taken away from me. But if we start to educate and to open the minds of our congregations around feeding the people first, meeting the needs first, then maybe the why we feel the need to have the gun, we can follow up on the back end with that. I would just encourage us to have that conversation on Sunday.
Yeah,
And-
no
and that's-
problem. Thank you. And Saturday as well too. Don't leave me out now.
Yes.
I think that we have really, and I've said this to a school today, that the faith community have really held on to a lot of teachings and schooling for young people and training for parents. So I think we have been doing a lot of work. I want to give credit to the faith communities who have really held down their own, who are serving for 30, 40 years within the same community. Some churches are celebrating 100 years in community as well, who stayed through the crack epidemic. And so I want to lift that up too as well, and see Rabbi Michael, who's posting too as well, to be engaged in that. So thank you so much for the comments. If someone from the team can help me in terms of who is next, I'm not really seeing the hands that's raised, but let me see. I have,
We have Dr. Debbie.
Okay, Dr. Debbie Amantasa, you can go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Salam alaikum. Peace and greetings. Really wonderful to have this national gathering. I appreciate all of you, and the prayers and everything that we're doing together is so important. I wanted to take the opportunity to share with those of you that live in New York City that on June 4th, we are actually doing Wear Orange rally in March. I will drop the information in the chat. This is with the 67th Precinct and other community-based organizations in Brooklyn, where we are actually going to have youth groups with marching bands, a caravan of vehicles decorated in orange that will start at 3 p.m. From the block of East 56th Street between Linden and Church, where 12-year-old son, Cade, was murdered, and his aunt miraculously survived the 4 gunshots. So we are going to be assembling at 2:30 so we can begin promptly for the march. Our destination will be Church Avenue and Flatbush Avenue to begin there, where there'll be speeches. We're hoping that the mayor will be there. And as many of you, this is a part of the national Wear Orange weekend, where people wear orange, and they say that basically they wear orange and they have a specific name of an individual that they're wearing it for. So the Ebony American Merchants Association is partnering with the faith groups in Brooklyn, because we've lost several people to gun violence at bodegas, and we would really love for everybody to join us. So thank you so much, and I hope to see many of you there. I think it's the only one that's happening in New York City. It would be so powerful if we made it a citywide action that will be a part of the Wear Orange weekend starting Friday through Sunday.
No problem. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. I'll take the next two. Rabbi Michael, you've been active in the chat, so talk to me, brother. And then we'll have Reverend Dr. Victoria.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I really appreciate it. I'm very humbled to be on this Zoom with everybody, and just hearing what everybody's doing. This is an issue that's been important to me for a long time, and as we hear about more and more of the shooting sprees and this horrific loss of life, it just moves my soul in such a profound way. The prayers, the showing up, the pastoring is incredible and heroic, and I appreciate hearing all of that. But some of what I was putting in the chat is, I just feel like this group, and hopefully we could get more clergy of all religions together, that there's just no more. You started this with your introduction. There's no more powerful voice than the religious voice. If we're speaking from our hearts and we're speaking, from our scriptures, it's such a strong message about what's going on in this country. Is so destructive and is so against God's God's will and God's wishes. But I'm thinking more on the political line, that as we come together, and if we can get our congregants together, could we form these mass movements of people speaking out in all the messages that we want, but also specifically to our elected officials to say, you have to act. We are demanding that you act, and not just for ourselves and not just for our own moral reasoning, but as the way that we understand the Holy Scripture, the way we understand God's will. We have to act as a society. I'd love to see if we can do that too.
Yeah. I think that this is what this call is about. It's about realizing that you are not alone, and the host of all of us here and of everyone in this room is to show the power that we can collectively have a response to what is happening. We can't do it on our own. We can't do it solo and individually. It has to be something that is collective. And so what we are showing to you and to all of us is that, number one, we have the reach. We can reach clergy from across the country. Number two, all of us want to find ways to collaborate together. And number three, we want to be able to use Clergy for Safe Cities as a clearinghouse for thoughts, Clergy for Safe Cities to help and to support the national faith leaders to end gun violence. And that's why we are gathering not only in this forum, but also in person on Monday next week at 6:30 to be able to show that we have to be able to lend our voice to be in spaces together. So that is very important. And thank you so much. Okay. I'm going to go to Reverend Victoria, and then I'll just take two more. We're out of time, but we're still rocking as much as we can. We will not go over 4:30. So I'm going to ask all of you faith leaders that you keep it very short, because if I can get 7 people in by 4:30, I will. If I can get only 1 in, don't blame me, blame the next person who's speaking for a longer time. So let's go 1 minute round. Let's go.
Okay, good afternoon all. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
All right, Pastor Monrose, thank you. I want to say from all of us, we are so honored that you have taken this position with the mayor's office. The mantle could not have fallen on better shoulders, and we support you. I also want to give a quick shout out to the God Squad and Clergy for Safe Cities. I was in despair on Wednesday. It's true, there are mass shootings every single day in America. They just don't make the news anymore unless they are over a certain number. That is heinous. That is just totally unacceptable. I've been working on nonviolent living for decades now, and I don't see enough change. And what keeps me from despair is coming together with people on this call who care deeply about making a difference. We can't do it on cheap grace. And so I want to, in the interest of giving other people time to speak their voice, I want to offer 2 possibilities. I hope you will join me. One is I started an organization, nonprofit, called the Love Task Force on Nonviolent Living. It stands for Liberate Ourselves, Value Everyone. So it's L.O.V.E. We put on some very good programs, and then I had to let it go because I just didn't have the time to invest. I feel strongly it's time to start it up again. And,
hey, Reverend, could you go quickly? We have 7 hands up.
Yes, okay, that's number one. The other is that I have an opportunity to offer a workshop, workbook that has been done by the Children's Psychological Health Center. Dr. Gilbert Kleiman is working tirelessly on all efforts. And I would like to make that available to anyone who would be interested to do just a very small donation to the Harlem Family Institute, where I work. I think we have to work on prevention, and these children that are picking up assault rifles, these are children. What are we doing to our children that feel the only kind of voice they can have is through a gun? We need to work there There are children that we love and we need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. All right, the rest of the faith leaders, I'm going to need you to have great discipline in time. 1 minute, please. 1 minute. Go ahead, Dr. Edward Owusu. After you, we're going to go to our sister, Pastor Faulkner, for 1 minute. Then we go to Dr. David Jackson for 1 minute.
Okay, Pastor
1
Rose.
minute.
Pastor Manrose, thank you very much for this organization. So when we meet, then I will talk, but I'm going to be very brief. Now, the problem going on in this country, there are two aspects. We have the short-term solution and the long-term solution. The short-term solution is what we are talking about, but the long-term solution is the definition of parental responsibility. Now, if you look at the definition of parental responsibility, you will see that many families, they don't bring up their children for them to be balanced. Next time I will give you the definition, because I've been a chaplain of schools and colleges, even here in New York. I taught in Brooklyn, Holmes, Manhattan, Queens, and Bronx. It was after the school program, which was established by President Bush. So I taught in so many homes apart from the colleges, and then I'm also a missionary. Taught in colleges, universities, and I know the problem, because the problem is with the definition of parental responsibility, how the parents can bring up their children, and when they grow up, they must be balanced. So that is the long solution. So when we meet on Monday, I will emphasize more on it. So my wife wants to say a little bit.
Thank you so much. We have to move to another one. Thank you so much. We have to move to another one. My apologies. But yes, we're going to keep on talking. Let's go to Pastor Barbara Faulkner.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon. This is Pastor Barbara Felker. Pastor Monroe, I'm wondering if we could organize a document with legislation pertaining to gun violence, federal, state, and city. This way we can educate our congregations. We can also get our local legislators to hear from them and from the church collectively. Would that be something we could have distributed?
Yeah, definitely. That consider it done.
Perfect.
Thank you for that. Good idea. All right, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Pastor Monroe, and grace and peace to everyone. One of the challenges, as Dr. Owusu just mentioned, is we have to get more involved with our young people. A lot of the crimes are either being committed by young people or against young people. New Life in New York City have been working with young people in New York City for almost 50 years. And in partnership with Pastor Monroe's office, we are sponsoring a resource fair and panel to discuss how faith communities can get more involved with the young people in their communities or take their involvement to the next level. I want to invite you to be a part of that. Those who live in the New York and tri-state area. It's happening on Monday, June the 27th from 12 to 2 p.m. at the Interchurch Center or the God Box here on the Upper West Side. It's free, no cost to you. You can email me. I provide the information in the chat if you'd like more information or to find out how you can be involved. We will have some tremendous city agencies, other faith communities, and leaders in the room. You want to be there, and we will provide lunch. Thank you, Pastor Monroe, for this time.
And thank you so much for that. We'll have the last person, Paul Sladuskas, come quickly.
Hi, Reverend Paul Sladkus, All Faiths and Spiritual. That photo of me is a photo in Times Square for the International Day of Peace. We've been doing peace events here in Central Park and Brooklyn and Times Square for over 20 years, celebrating the United Nations International Day of Peace. I'm a broadcaster for 50 years. I open up our broadcast, goodnewsplanet.tv, goodnewsbroadcast.com, and our Peace Day events to everybody on this call to share any content and anything that they want us to share with our community. We have about 6,000 shows after 23 years. Pastor Monroe, great job. Thank you, and thank you
so much.
everybody else. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all of you. All right, so faith leaders, thank you all for your time with us. Unfortunately, with the amount of events that you have, we will not remember most of them. So I want to always encourage faith leaders that when we come on a call, to be very strategic in terms of sending us some ideas as to the work that you are doing, but not necessarily always saying that exactly when it's going to be, because again, I don't know if I take a quiz, if you're going to remember. What I do want to offer to all of you, I hope it's not too late, but if you have a program or if you have some ideas and some suggestion in person, if you can give it to us, so that number one, that we can give to other faith leaders and send it out to all of you who RSVP, that'll be good. Number two, next week, Monday at 6:30, we're going to be having a national streaming of an ecumenical service in central Brooklyn. We want you to look out for that too as well. That is very important because we're having, again, our colleagues coming in from different states to join us in person. Those of you who are physically in the New York City area, if you could join us for that, that will be very, very much so grateful for you to join us next week, Monday, the 6th at 6:30. I'm going to pass it over to our president, Pastor Richard Edward Hines, and he's going to close out along with Pastor Stricker, I think.
Thank you, Pastor Monroe. So we just want to, as Pastor Monroe mentioned, to highlight next week, Monday at 6:30 p.m. at the Alliance Tabernacle, formerly Clarendon Road Church, where we will be continuing our conversation, this conversation as a national response to gun violence. We will look focusing on the crisis, the cause, and the cure for gun violence. And so we encourage you to be there out for that. There is a link in the chat, so you can RSVP, and we definitely look forward to having you. And then as an organization, the God Squad, who we continue to do the work around gun violence, June 21st, as I believe it was echoed a couple of times, tomorrow starts Gun Violence Awareness Month. And we, on June 21st, we'll be having our fundraiser, our 12th annual evening of celebration and remembrance. This will take place in Brooklyn here at the J Loft in East Flatbush. The link will be in the chat as well. We encourage you, and we are inviting you to be a part of this. Come on and join us for this event on June 21st at 6:30 p.m. We want you, tickets are $150, but we also invite persons to be sponsors, invite persons to make donations. The donation that you give, it is going directly into the work of gun violence. And so we are looking forward to your support. Please go to the Eventbrite here. The links are going in right now. Please fill in those links and make your presence, and also make a tangible contribution as well. It will go well to the work that we're doing and continue to do. Thank you so very much. And I appreciate everyone for coming on the call. I appreciate you all for taking the time out to spend some time with us on this national call, a call that is very important and a conversation that will continue, and not just a conversation, but conversation that will provoke action, and that we will all be able to play our part in advancing the welfare of our collective interest, that is living to see an end to gun violence. Thank you so much.
And thank you again. Thank you all. We're going to stop our live stream. And thank you for all of your dedication.